Welcome to VSOW. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that comes up a lot.
Hmm.
The line between cultural appreciation and, well, harmful cultural appropriation. We'll be looking specifically at this idea of the culture vulture.
Exactly. And our source for this is a collection of notes, bits from articles, discussions, basically a dossier on the topic. Our goal is to really unpack what these notes say, the definitions, a specific process they describe, the examples given.
Right. We want to get clearer on what makes engagement respectful versus what causes harm. Because, as the notes point out, understanding this is, well, pretty crucial today. We're sticking just to what's in these notes to give you a solid look at how this material frames the issue.
Okay, so first things first. The notes start by defining cultural appropriation.
And how do they lay that out? What's the core idea?
It's described as fundamentally taking something from another culture without respect or real understanding. The notes use words like theft, disrespect, exploitation, even misuse or denigration.
So it's not just borrowing something you admire.
Not according to these sources, no. It often involves a dominant culture taking parts of another culture, but stripping them of their original context, their meaning, often just for looks or to sell something.
Okay. So context and intent seem key here.
Very much so. The notes talk about it showing up as, say, an outsider trying to make parts of another culture their own, or claiming they invented certain food flavors when they didn't, or claiming ownership of a whole style they didn't create, sometimes even acting like a caricature.
And this isn't new, right? The notes mention historical context.
They do. They point way back, giving examples like white performers in blackface or those racist vaudeville shows done for profit. There's even a mention of Frederick Douglass condemning this really strongly, calling them filthy scum of white society, stealing complexions, essentially profiting by mocking black people.
Wow. And how does this play out now, like on social media? The notes touch on that.
Yeah, it's mentioned that online appropriation can sometimes look like admiration on the surface. But underneath, it might actually be about exploiting or even mocking a culture, maybe for likes, followers, or, money.
So a superficial appearance hiding something else. What are the negative results highlighted in the sources?
Well, several things. Perpetuating negative stereotypes, for one, spreading ignorance or misinformation about the culture, playing into racist tropes, things like stereotyping, or erasing the cultural identity of the originators.
Erasure. That sounds serious.
It is. One point made is that it gets really problematic when the cultural element becomes more associated with the outsiders than the people who actually created it.
And this term, culture vulture, keeps popping up in the notes. Is it basically used as a synonym for this kind of appropriation?
Within this material, yes. Culture vulture seems to be the label used for the person or group doing this specific kind of harmful appropriation.
Got it. The notes give examples too, don't they? I remember reading about influencers renaming Latin American dishes.
Right, things like calling ceviche or agua fresca cowboy caviar or spa water. These are presented in the notes as examples of exploitation, taking something cultural, repackaging it, often without credit, for personal gain or clicks.
And the clean girl aesthetic.
Yeah, that's another one cited. The note suggests that this look was pioneered by BIPOC women, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, often when it was maybe looked down on, called trashy or ghetto. And then later, it gets picked up and highlighted, often by wealthy white women, sometimes presented as something totally new.
Hmm. There's also mention of music like early trance producers and Indian culture.
Yes, the notes describe some early 90s trance producers using elements of Indian culture in a way that showed a pretty shallow understanding, which was seen as insulting. And there are other music examples, allegations against Led Zeppelin about using musical ideas, with notes suggesting they denied knowing the original artists.
Iggy Azalea comes up too.
Right. From Australia, adopting what's described as a Brooklyn accent, the notes frame this as using a largely black culture, like a costume, for profit.
And Jake Paul. There was an accusation mentioned.
Yes, Tyron Woodley accusing Jake Paul of adopting looks and behaviors tied to black culture, framing it as trying to vulture from that community.
And Aquafina using AAVE, or a blaccent.
That's brought up as well, seen by some critics mentioned in the notes as appropriating from the black experience, particularly for comedic roles. These examples, all pulled directly from the source material, really paint a picture of the different ways this can manifest.
They really do. Okay, so beyond just defining it, the notes actually outline a process, a sort of modus operandi for the culture vulture.
That's right. A 5-step process is described in the material.
5 steps. Okay, let's break that down. What's step 1?
Step 1 is appreciation.
Appreciation.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Like noticing something positive.
Well, yes and no. The notes are very specific here. They distinguish healthy admiration from what they call the vulture's unhealthy appreciation. This unhealthy kind is described as being driven by something more rapacious, predatory even. It's the initial, I see it, I like it, but the liking is just the start of wanting to take it.
Okay, so it's an appreciation with an ulterior motive. What's next? After liking it.
Step 2, infiltration.
Getting inside, basically.
Yes, entering or gaining access to the culture or the community. The notes say this is often done gradually or surreptitiously, sneakily. One tactic mentioned is using an excessive outward show of appreciation, which the sources call flattery, to get in.
Ah, so using praise to gain access.
Exactly. It could be active, like injecting themselves into spaces, or passive, maybe being invited in because they seem so appreciative. The key word the notes use is surreptitiously.
Okay. Appreciate, infiltrate. Step 3.
Step 3, imitation. Copying the actions, the look, the way people talk. Modern examples given in the notes include fashion, hairstyles, vernacular, and especially music, blues, jazz, hip-hop are mentioned.
So mimicking the cultural elements.
Right. And the notes add that sometimes this imitation step might actually come before infiltration, maybe to make the infiltration seem more natural or easier.
Interesting. So appreciate, infiltrate, imitate. What comes after copying?
Step 4, elimination or extermination. The notes apparently use these terms interchangeably.
Elimination. Extermination. That sounds pretty intense, getting rid of the original.
That's how it's described. Elimination meaning to get rid of, remove, omit. Extermination meaning to destroy completely. The notes clarify that even elimination, which might sound less severe, serves the same purpose for the vulture, removing or obscuring the original source of the cultural element.
Why? To make room for their own version.
Presumably. The material says there are countless historical examples of this step, though it doesn't detail them beyond broad categories.
Okay. And the final step in this process.
Step 5, appropriation. This is usually the last phase, according to the notes, although sometimes it might happen before step 4. Appropriation here means taking possession, making use of something exclusively for yourself, often without permission, or just sort of seizing it as your right.
So this is the ultimate goal.
It seems so. For the vulture described in these notes, it completes the cycle. I see it, I like it, I want it, and now they take it.
So the full sequence laid out in the notes is appreciation, the unhealthy kind, infiltration, imitation, elimination, extermination, and finally, appropriation.
Yes. And the notes state the typical result is that the original gets destroyed, or at least obscured. Knowledge of who or what the original was becomes faded or lost, which then makes it easier for the vulture to be seen as the originator.
And the notes stress this isn't just a modern internet thing.
No, they explicitly say this culture, vulture culture, as they term it, is ancient, has existed as long as humankind. They characterize these vultures as people who might seem like appreciators on the surface, but underneath there's this resentment or desire. They like what someone else has, but dislike that they don't have it, which leads to this predatory cycle.
But crucially, the notes also say this 5-step process isn't meant to describe everyone outside a culture, right?
Absolutely critical point. The notes emphasize that healthy appreciation, wanting to learn, wanting to affiliate for personal growth, or even simple imitation done respectfully, that's not the same as this vulture behavior.
Which leads us perfectly into the next section.
Yeah.
Really drawing that line clearly between appreciation and appropriation, based on what these notes say.
Right. How do we tell the difference?
So based on the material, what does cultural appreciation look like? How is it characterized?
The notes describe it as coming from a place of healthy admiration, valuing the culture. It's about paying homage, but doing it in an educated, classy, respectful way that requires effort.
Effort, like what?
Like doing your research, really listening to the stories and perspectives from people within that culture. Learning firsthand, maybe through documentaries, music, real friendships, trying authentic food from the source.
So learning comes first, then engagement.
That's the idea presented, and a huge part of it is giving credit. Knowing the history of what you're engaging with and sharing that history, especially the note stress, if you're adopting styles or using cultural products, particularly if you might profit from it. Crediting the culture, the people, is vital.
Does it mention supporting the community itself?
Yes, that's highlighted too. Appreciation can involve giving back, sharing any benefits. Suggestions include supporting local artists and businesses from that culture, visiting their shops, commissioning work, trying food trucks run by people from the community, listening to their music directly. It's positioned as being an ally, fostering genuine learning.
The notes also say it's possible to adopt or mix cultural elements respectfully, and they give positive examples.
They do. Talking Heads and Paul Simon working with African music is mentioned as being done thoughtfully, courteously. David Byrne's work, based on regional Mexican music, touring with a Mexican band, funding a label, consciously not making it all about him.
Cooter and Buena Vista Social Club.
Presented as an example of putting Cuban musicians center stage globally. Paul Simon, again, noted for paying South African musicians well and offering shared writing credits.
Even opening a Japanese restaurant could be appreciation, the notes suggest, if the owner is open about influences and truly understands the culture.
Right. And Elvis's music is mentioned, influenced by growing up in largely black communities. The Rolling Stones, too, noted for being open about their blues roots, giving credit and money, bringing blues legends on stage with them.
Bruno Mars comes up, too, in one perspective.
Yes, one view cited sees his use of black musical styles as tasteful, respectful appreciation.
Okay, so appreciation involves respect, research, credit, maybe support, thoughtful engagement. Now let's flip that. Contrast it again with harmful cultural appropriation as the notes define it.
So, recapping from the notes, it's taking without that respect or understanding. It perpetuates negative stereotypes. It spreads ignorance about the culture.
Like those influencer examples rebranding dishes for clicks, call exploitation in the notes.
Exactly. Or the clean girl aesthetic example, co-opted after being dismissed when linked to BIPOC women. The notes even mention the artist Bad Bunny calling out people in music who exploit Latin culture in his song El Apagón.
And the trance music example insulting because it was shallow.
Right. Other markers mentioned again, claiming ownership or invention falsely, like with food flavors. The historical blackface example, clearly for profit and based on mockery. Social media use where admiration hides exploitation.
The Jake Paul accusation of vulching by adopting looks without the experience.
And the Aquafina example, the use of AAVE, or a black scent, seen as problematic, especially the notes add, in the context where black people might feel pressured to change how they speak professionally, while others can adopt and discard aspects of black culture, like a costume.
Right. The costume idea comes up with Iggy Azalea, too, faking an accent. And Led Zeppelin's alleged taking without acknowledging sources.
These examples really highlight that harmful dynamic described in the notes.
Though the notes do acknowledge some nuance gets lost sometimes.
Yes, they mention that the debate can sometimes flatten out, where any use of elements from another culture gets labeled appropriation, regardless of how it's done. Sometimes equating culture strictly with race, like any white person with braids or rapping, is automatically appropriating.
And there's another perspective included too, right, about focusing too much on profit.
Yes, one view highlighted suggests that reducing appropriation only to money, like viewing culture as purely racial intellectual property, is a sad way to look at culture and the world. So the notes include these different angles, showing it's complex.
Okay, so pulling it all together from the material, the core difference between appreciation and appropriation seems to boil down to a couple of key things in these notes.
It really seems to center on the intent, as described. Is it coming from healthy admiration and respect, or from that predatory desire the notes mention? And crucially, the resulting impact. Does it uplift, credit, support the original culture, or does it stereotype, exploit, erase, and ultimately cause harm to that community? Intent and impact.
So for you listening, what's the takeaway from digging into these notes? Why does this matter?
Well, understanding these concepts, as laid out here, gives you a framework. It helps you navigate our very interconnected world more thoughtfully. It helps you engage with different cultures respectfully, constructively.
And it makes you a more critical consumer of media and trends, right? You can start to see these dynamics the notes describe. Hopefully it helps you avoid causing harm unintentionally or participating in these patterns yourself. It equips you to think more deeply about it all.
We've certainly gone through these notes pretty thoroughly. Definitions, the Vulture process, the appreciation versus appropriation distinction.
It's a lot to process, drawn entirely from this specific set of source materials.
It definitely provides a detailed viewpoint on this challenging topic.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into these particular notes on cultural appropriation and appreciation.
And maybe a final thought for you to consider, something sparked by the material. Beyond just not appropriating, how can industries actively move towards real support, towards collaboration and equitable sharing with creators and communities from different cultures?
That's a big question to reflect on. If you found this deep dive valuable, please do consider subscribing, maybe liking this, and definitely leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for listening to VSOW.